Hey, it's Dr. Amanda with Straightsmile Solutions, straightsmilesolutions.com. And periodically, I tell you to listen to a podcast. And if there is a podcast where I'm like, preach it, like, preach, you guys are just spot on. Like, they're nailing it, they're saying everything right, they are just getting their verbiage correct. And I mean, they're speaking the truth. So many podcasts are just so Kool-Aidy. You can tell exactly what angle they're coming from, and they're all often KOLs, and they often are being compensated for supporting certain positions. If you don't know what a lobbyist is, let's talk about lobbyists. If you've never been involved in lobbying in your state, in the country, it's the same thing. We lobby in our state for certain topics. Like I was just asked to help lobby for some funding for a pool because obviously I'm involved in athletics and youth aquatics and stuff like that. So it's the same thing in dentistry. There are people, KOLs, that's what they're called. KOLs are lobbyists. They're key opinion leaders. Yes, you have opinions, but you get compensated to speak according to the opinion of a certain company. Like they're like, oh, you're like-minded, you speak about this and we will compensate you. Well, guess what? Everyone that's a KOL has a contract about what you can say and you cannot say. And as soon as you start saying stuff that is against what they believe, even if it is correct, even if it is your clinical opinion, you get punished. You know, whether they take away shares, whether they sue you, whether they take away they just fire you. I've been a KOL enough times, and I was an ignorant KOL. I didn't realize, like, people are like, hey, we'd love for you to speak for us. Gosh, you're so smart. You know everything about this. But then they try to get you to say things a certain way. And it took me a while to figure out that, no, I ain't doing that. And then nobody wanted to work with me anymore because once we started disagreeing on things, I'm going to put my foot in the ground. But anyways, the reason why I'm referring you to this podcast is that, listen, 99.9% of these podcasts are trash. They're just trash. They're so KOL-y. They're so Kool-Aid-y. I just listen to it and I roll my eyes and I almost barf listening to a lot of these podcasts because you can tell what angle they're coming from. This is one of the first airway-focused orthodontic, like legit orthodontic podcasts that isn't, if there is a company involved, I don't know what this doc company is. I believe it's started by Mike DeLuke. Mike and I were not in the same class. I was a year ahead of him in residency, but we did all of our studies together. Mike's a legit dude. Like if when he speaks about research, and anyone from UConn can do research backwards and forwards because that's how we're trained. We are trained to read literature, trained to read statistics. Like we actually got our masters and we know what we're doing. Mike knew his stuff. So I 100% trust Mike. So when I tell you guys I 100% trust somebody, this comes very rarely. So if I tell you I 100% trust what Mike says, I 100% trust what Mike says. So I really hadn't gotten into his podcast because, to be honest, I thought it was like some of these other Kool-Aid phase one companies that are just that are being taught by general dentists who are acting like orthodontists. And after I've seen some of these people, and you guys know who I'm talking about, some of these people's lectures at ADAs and AAPDs, and it's just nauseating, the stuff they're doing. It's just so clear. They're just, ugh. I don't like some of these people. So most of these other companies makes me want to throw up, vomit. Mike's does not now. So I'm actually putting him in my thumbs up category. Listen to his podcast because so far he hasn't said anything that's wrong or wrong. That's what I'm going to say. He hasn't said anything I disagree with or that is wrong. Like he's right on the button. Okay, so let's talk about some of the stuff he talked about in this podcast specifically. And I listened to this podcast twice. I first I listened to it on 1.4 speed, which I normally do. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much good stuff. I'm going to listen to it on regular speed. Oh, wow. And I replayed it and I took notes. So Mike, if you're listening to this, good job. All right. So Dr. Burstone would be proud. Way to go pushing back. So one thing that I like that Mike and this Hal Stewart, and I wasn't familiar with Hal Stewart, but he's awesome, whatever he's doing. I got to look into his stuff a little bit more. By the way, Hal, if you're listening to this, I messaged you on LinkedIn. Is that they talked about the ADA's position on AIRWAY versus the AAO's position on AIRWAY versus Steve Carstenson's position on AIRWAY, which was great because I met Steve. I know Steve. Steve is legit. He's someone like Mike that just literally is doing what they need to do because it's the right thing to do. And yeah, it may be profitable for them, but I feel like they're doing what's right first. Listen, you guys, if you wanted to get into profit for this whole phase one airway thing, it's just a matter of time. People are already starting to do it. They're trying to find ways to bundle it and to make this a mechanical AI type of thing. I don't think you can do that with kids. I don't know. I'm not sure yet. And I'm afraid to find out. But let's go down into a little bit more into the ADA and the AAO positions on AIRWAY. Okay, so you've got your standard AAO airway, which is like wait for MD. So when the AAO came out with their feedback, they made it a medical issue, which is not wrong, but they basically put the orthodontist under the physician. So they're saying airway in little kids is a medical issue. Do not treat, our position is we don't treat without a physician. Well, when you start doing that, when the physicians aren't being trained and being told it's, when the orthodontists are saying it is, but the physicians aren't being taught that way, you can go to any pediatrician and they don't know this. They don't know anything about orthodontics at all. So you can't do that. You can't just say, oh, it's your problem. Only when you say go, we do it. Well, no, because if they don't know that that's their job, then, and that's their responsibility, they're not going to be doing it. And these kids are going to be caught in limbo. The parents want to get started. We're saying we need to wait for your physician, the pediatrician, the ENT to say it's okay to start. No, we're not doing that. Okay, that's a headache. So that's why we disagree with the AAO model, because it's so hard to test, and it's incredibly more expensive now. Like if you're saying that everyone has to have a sleep test in order to do certain types of movements in kids, I understand in adults. Okay, yeah, if we're thinking about doing a MARPE or this or that, yeah, let's, or if we're thinking about straightening, but straightening is going to decrease the size and or retract the teeth, then let's see if we have a sleep issue, especially if we're seeing signs. That makes sense. But in kids, I don't know about that. So, whereas Steve Carson's focus was, refer anytime you see a subtle sign like nasal health, awkward, or, a not ideal craniofacial growth, then you can refer. Steve also said it's a good idea for us to be able to dispense wearable technologies for physicians to interpret. That makes sense. Why can't we, if we can dispense all kinds of other things and do surgeries, why can't we dispense sleep screening equipment at night that the physician is going to interpret? And you can do that in some states. I heard Texas is allowing it, but not all states are allowing that. And then Steve Carson also recommended that you have active collaboration with SLPs, myofunctional therapists, ENTs, and all that. I love that. So basically, the other thing that AAO was saying that is weird is they were saying basically orthodontics cures sleep apnea. Therefore, we need a diagnosis of sleep apnea to do orthodontics. That is not true. Orthodontics does not necessarily cure sleep apnea, especially if you don't do it in a way that is going to cure. There's a lot of different ways I can move teeth. I can move them forward, back, out, in, up, down. Not all orthodontic movements are going to cure sleep apnea. There might be some that do, but that's only if it's the type of sleep apnea that was being caused by a lack of space, But let's say, for example, let's say there's a case that has a vaulted palate, constricted arches, right? But we can expand and unvault the palate and make space, But if the tongue is tied and tethered, it's not going to go up there. Therefore, the palate is not going to remodel, and this is not going to be fixed. This is not going to fix sleep apnea because the issue was twofold. It was structural, lack of space, lack of a parking garage, but it was also structural in that something was tethered and it needed to be stretched, released, and the fascia had to be released as well, with some type of chiro, postural manipulation. So there's so many things that go into this. So that is an issue for me. I mean, definitely. Let's see what else. Another great thing, I really agree just in general, is Steve Carson's philosophy, which is kind of there's elements from the ADA and elements from the AAL, but I think he's right on it, and that's the one I agree with. So he also believes that dentists are uniquely positioned to catch early warning signs like craniofacial underdevelopment. Yeah, if they have a tiny jaw, I'm going to see it, right? Tiny upper jaw, tiny lower jaw. And he says it should be a routine part of every exam for all primary care dentists, general dentists, and pediatric dentists, which means if it's part of our standard of care, it needs to be taught in school. Well, it's not being taught in school. So also he thinks there should be a nose first philosophy, which is basically that all airway health starts with nasal bleeding. Breathing is the foundation. Yeah, of course. But again, if they're not teaching this to pediatricians, dentists, who is screening for it? Because I see mouth breathers everywhere I go. Everywhere I go, mouth breathers, and it drives me crazy. Also, he recommends to definitely consider biologicals, biosignals, wearable technology to collect data, and then send it to the medical colleagues for diagnosis. I'm cool with that. That's totally fine. I'm not asking to diagnose. That's fine. I mean, you could teach us to do it, but it's not that hard. But if the MDs want to have that, they can have it. I'll let them have the diagnosis. That's fine. An online diagnosis is not expensive. It's the sleep labs that are expensive. So that is a hurdle. That is a thing. An online wearable that you could own in your office and dispense just for screening one night, not a problem. So he talks about focusing on the root cause, pushing for physiologic assessment, and to focus on the cause of the breathing issues. Duh, of course, right? So, all right. So that's some important things. Let's see what else I needed to tell you. I think I had a few other notes. Let me look through my notes real quick. Okay, we didn't talk about the ADA's position. So, ADA's position is all dentists must screen for sleep SRDB. This is the one that came out, I think, in 2018 or 2017. And then your treatment or your oral appliances or your orthodontics should follow with a prescription of what you've seen. Let's see. Any type of orthodontic procedures should have an orthodontic reason. I get it. I mean, it's really not that hard. I mean, as long as the sixes are in, it's very rare that you're going to have someone that has that much symptoms that doesn't have an orthodontic reason for treatment. They couldn't use a little expansion. I mean, how often do you see someone that has all spacing, giant arches, and is still suffering? If they're still suffering from airway issues, guess what? It's not an orthodontic issue. It's a structural issue. Something else is going on. Orthodontics is probably not going to help it, you know? But if there's no orthodontics to be done, then you have to go chase up a different tree. You know, that's not going to happen. So I think you guys understand now, you know, the basics between the physician-facing model and the we're dentists. This is still, you know, our domain. We know this stuff. We're just not going to make the diagnosis. All we're doing is capturing the data, then letting the MD make the diagnosis. I'm cool with that. And then the idea is that let's get started when we need to get started, if there's a reason to. So, all right. So that's pretty much it. Great podcast. I definitely recommend listening to it and listen to it twice. And good for you, Mike, and your team for putting the truth out there. And I have to give them credit. It sounds like Mike is actually starting to lecture at regional orthodontic meetings. I think he said he lectured at the Florida Orthodontics Association convention or something. And he talked all about this stuff. He said for 2 or 3. Mike can talk. Y'all, I can talk, but I don't want to sit and do a big lecture for 2 to 3 hours. I'd rather shoot my head off. No, thank you. There's just no reason. But good for you, Mike. That takes some cojones to sit up and do that. So, and I know you've got them. So good for you. I'm proud of you, Mike. All right, take care.